a decorated veteran of the Indian Navy whose 35 plus year career has bridged the battlefield, the classroom, and the command center is Rear Admiral M D Suresh.
Battlefield requires soldier to win at all costs. Boardrooms also require me to help the company win, but ethically. It's the values, discipline, ethics, and desire to win with core competence and experience in niche areas.
And I think now we're also learning that how technology changes and we say the world changes. Imagine the entire defense system also has to take that into account.
Now, I have seen tech evolve from very close quarters across 4 decades, and therefore I have some observations for leaders and managers of tech environment.
Hello and welcome to FaceTime with Leaders, a podcast by Directors Institute World Council of Directors. I'm your host Tanay All, and today, we're in the presence of a force. He's a real admiral, or rather, he's a rear admiral, a war strategist, a tech visionary, and a master of diplomacy. Joining us today is Rear Admiral M D Suresh, a decorated veteran of the Indian Navy whose 35 plus year career has bridged the battlefield, the classroom, and the command center. Whether it's leading India's stealth warship projects, revamping the largest naval academy in Asia, or representing India across embassies in the Gulf, his journey reads like a masterclass in leadership, resilience, and transformation. He received the Now Sena Medal for his role in the Kargil War, the AVSM for distinguished service, and has played a key role in shaping India's maritime and intelligence doctrine for the modern era. Admiral Suresh, thank you for being with us, sir. It's truly an honor.
Thank you, Tanay. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today with you. I would especially like to thank the Directors Institute for giving me the opportunity to transfer my 4 decades of experience in warfighting domain to the domain of corporate governance in boardrooms. My endeavor really would be to bring the value system, the EQ, and mental discipline, which was required in my domain for over 40 years, to the boardrooms that I would probably have the honor and privilege to be a part of. As you're probably aware, the battlefield requires a soldier to win at all costs. Boardrooms also require me to help the company win, but ethically. It's the values, discipline, ethics, and desire to win with core competence and experience in niche areas that I bring to the boardroom. I'm looking forward to our interaction today.
Likewise, sir. Admiral, I know we've just covered a lot in your intro, but no script can truly capture the live journey behind it, right? So let's start there. So, in your own words, sir, how did this incredible journey unfold? Could you take us back to the beginning and walk us through the moments that brought you here?
Tanay, I'm a second generation naval officer. My father was also in the Navy. So, when I was a young kid, an uncle, as we call them, one evening came home and dropped with me the NDA Silver Jubilee Journal, the journal which the National Defence Academy was celebrating its 25th year, and they had created a journal. He gave me the journal and said, take a look at it. So when I found that there were no classroom pictures, they were only outdoors. So it was an instant love with the NDA in my class 7th, but it was an incorrect perception because education never ceases in the military. Courses and exam performance determines professional growth. Reputation reaches your next unit even before you arrive. And technology and thinking how to use emerging technology becomes a second nature. Training process at the academies convert young men and women from career chasers to living for a greater cause than self, very unconsciously. It starts with competing for your squadrons at the NDA, where you will finish a cross-country race even if you're injured to avoid penalties to the squadron's tally. Soon, it is the honor and fair name of your ship, regiment, squadron. Essentially, unwittingly, you develop the core value that team matters far more than yourself. It doesn't happen anywhere else as a structured process. That's why the military has a very large fan following. It's about the ethos and value system that's grown unconsciously, but consciously by the system. within each soldier and officer without him or her even realizing that it is developing within. That, in sum total, really sums up my journey. But as you grow in the service, the structured courses of education prepares you for the next job. So every subsequent appointment challenges you from within. And in any case, you hate to lose. So you do all that is necessary to overcome each and every challenge successfully. You prepare yourself as best as you can, and you prepare yourself for the unknowns and the uncertainties, and responds with your experience thus far that it has taught you to win finally and to overcome these challenges. Another important element that the military teaches you as you grow along is parallel processing of multiple inputs arriving at the same time, and taking decisions with limited information is a part of the game, which starts funnily, when as a young officer, the captain insists that you will man the gangway. The gangway is a place that connects ashore to the ship. You are required to man that gangway from morning before the ship wakes up, and you're required to be on that gangway till the last man on short leave comes back. It is necessary. He could come drunk, fall overboard. These are issues. Every young officer cribs. But what he doesn't realize is very subconsciously adapts parallel processing and decision making at the same time. Example, there could be a crane which is delivering stores above the ship. At the same time, there's a sailor or men who are waiting to get inspected before they go ashore. And that's when the cook calls up and says, hey, there's no water coming to the galley. Please get the marine engineering department to open it. And the marine engineering department says, there's a pump that is getting overhauled. All this happens, and then he suddenly sees an admiral's car approaching where he has to give ceremonials. All these happens on a daily basis, and the young officer learns to do all this at a very young level, at his level. But what he's doing essentially is through experiencing the need to parallel process and quickly reach decisions. The military prepares you also through formal theoretical education and practical processes for each battle situation. You replace a gangway with enemy vectors coming at you. When you are the captain of a ship or a fleet commander, you're required to observe, orient, decide, and act. The very famous OODA loop. The best part is all these capacities and capabilities developed as part of a structured process, and very, very unconsciously in the initial stages and consciously subsequently. This is the sum total, really, of my journey in the military and where I sit today.
I think that'll be very interesting stuff for the listeners to actually understand of how things you do initially in your journey actually build mindsets rather than teach you a specific kind of work. Like you said, it's the subconscious mind that's being trained with respect to the on-ground activity, which we only realize later, right?
Yes. And it's the same subconscious mind that makes you do stuff for something more than you, beyond you. It's just
Exactly.
in your ship and soon the nation.
And I'm sure if someone's told that, it won't get ingrained in them unless they actually do activities about it where it subconsciously starts fitting in that this is important.
You don't want your squadron to lose, and therefore you do it.
Yeah. So at that time, it's actually a very selfish motto. But it turns out to be like a team thing which a
Yes.
21-year-old probably wouldn't realize.
Yes. And by the way, the age then is 16 and 17.
Imagine. Yeah, correct. So
Yes.
at that time, yeah, very well said. So, one part of your career that truly stood out to me, and I'd love to go deeper into, is your time as the chief instructor at the Indian Naval Academy. You weren't just overseeing cadets, you were shaping the very foundation of how future naval officers would think, act, and lead. What was your personal compass during that phase, your North Star, when you set out to revamp an entire system that would define generations of leaders?
This is honestly my favorite part of my entire 40 years, my 4.5 years as chief instructor at the Naval Academy. Because I have kids and I saw strengths and weaknesses in the so-called Gen Next, as every older person does. But my concern was a little different. I saw weaknesses in our education system where only marks matter, not true knowledge. Unfortunately, in the Navy or in the military, what you study is what you apply on board. So it's not merely to pass an exam and get on with it. The second area was physical fitness. The physical fitness element in kids was largely absent because our parents put more stress on studies and marks. There aren't any playgrounds near homes, and even most schools don't have a worthwhile playground. Therefore, kids joining INA undergo a BTech curriculum, by the way, which is curated by IIT Mumbai. But unlike the IIT students, my cadets also have to clear minimum standards in physical fitness, swimming, weapon training, cross country, drill, service education, navigation, marine engineering, seamanship, etc., etc. And there's just 24 hours in a day. Swimming is a big challenge for our kids because Indian kids don't get an opportunity to learn swimming in our cities and towns. But to be functional at sea, they need to be comfortable in the water as naval officers. Therefore, whilst each cadet has to qualify in each of these evaluations, they also have to develop leadership and management of the squadron teams at multiple levels, at different levels, and get their teams to succeed in camps, exercises, sports competition, and the multiple co-curricular that squadrons and the academy puts. In addition to the co-curricular, they also have to learn a foreign language. These are all additional challenges. Along with all this, moral and ethical behavioral tendencies have also to be developed in kids who had to so far, remember, they're coming from an environment where they had to fight to get a seat in a bus. A lot of them had to wait near water taps to get water. And essentially, they were constantly competing for just living their daily lives. So those kids arrived at the academy. Therefore, structuring training so that every cadet qualifies. We don't want anyone to fail, but we don't lower our standards either. And therefore, we have to align processes so that teams and individuals emerge victorious, establishing moral and ethical standards in a 2,000 strong cadet body. We're also dealing with civilian and uniform training staff with their own strengths and weaknesses, and ensuring that training and educational processes were always tuned to the desired outcomes. In parallel, we also had to ensure that infrastructural growth of the academy met our aspirations. In a severely constrained and contained government financial process, all of these were challenges because cadets would come, if your infra is not ready, training would get affected. But the government process has a finite amount of time. So all these were interesting challenges. They were exciting, but also exhausting. And all these are happening concurrently. We got our cadets from every walk of life, every strata of society. And therefore, my direction to my training and administrative staff was simple. I don't care where they come from. I only care where they are headed to, what they become at the end of our training process. And that is all that mattered. And therefore, I actually had a lot of adrenaline in my system throughout the day when I was sitting as a chief instructor and deputy commandant of the Naval Academy.
So I think it's lovely to hear your just the will to give back to these people and build kids from the grassroots level, because like you said, the Indian education system, if I may say so, doesn't exactly work this way across borders. So and that's why somewhere wholesome development is what is considered with the military background. So now I find this part of your journey particularly fascinating. Your time as flag officer, doctrines and concepts. You were imagining the next decade of naval power and then actually shaping it. So when you're in that position where your thinking could influence generations, what was the biggest lesson you walked away with about shaping the future while still staying grounded in the realities of today?
Multiple things, and we had to work through 2 decades because a ship takes about 6 to 8 years in our system to get built, and it takes another 10 years to get approved. So we are looking at a 20-year window and not a decade. And the doctrines are established within militaries so that each person at every level knows what to expect from the ecosystem while addressing any operational or strategic situation. And therefore, there is a need to continually evaluate and reevaluate why established doctrines or methods especially when something new emerges over the horizon. It could be a new technology or even a new concept or a new idea. Ukraine is these days a classic example of how militaries react to developing situations or new threats. Now, keeping a careful eye on the long, medium, and short-term impact of any development anywhere in the world and its consequential impact on our operations for success in future battle is a mandate of the FODC. Therefore, my small team and I had to keep a very close watch on global technology developments, examine possible use cases by us as well as our adversaries, and then determine if the impact of that development required any changes to our existing doctrines and concepts, and also evolve new doctrines to counter such developments if it happened in the adversary. As an example, when I was FODC, there was an explosion of satellite surveillance in a period of 3 to 5 years, which required us to evaluate the impact on our formations and maneuvers at sea. They said battlefield is running transparent. There is no place to hide. The weapons got the ranges got longer, the weapons got faster, all of which required us to change our self-defense processes, damage control in case we get hit, and firefighting training for afloat teams, ashore infrastructure to support these issues. And parallelly, there was an explosion of electronics and computer engineering, which was galloping to some extent, also propelled by people like Elon Musk and the rest, all of which required us, even to start looking at basic educational qualifications of our personnel. And therefore, these issues now, when you do an action, reaction, and risk mitigation to maximize success and survival, this percentage is a perennial, continuous task and requires whole of organization approach with everyone feeling the need to contribute. It cannot be an FODC alone looking at these issues. Whilst it's a challenge, it's also a thrilling experience when you see officers and personnel coming out of their comfort zones and positively contributing to the organizational cause. That would happen when you give them an environment that all your ideas or concepts would be examined holistically and will give you the platform and the chance to defend your concept. Many ideas were actually crowdsourced from within by framing appropriate problem statements and identifying optimal solutions. By working with small but experienced and expertise laden teams that even framed and provided solutions for a single unit right up to the whole of Navy problems. Many such experiences arriving at tactical to operational and even strategic level solutions after wargaming, each of them was indeed most satisfying. A lot of those concepts still remain in force uh, and remain relevant, despite the passage of time and the evolution of technology. But most ideas and concepts will come to an end at some stage, and the next FODC will pick up the baton and go. That's how it's an institutional process. But it's a completely intellectual exercise, and if you
Yeah.
have a great team with you, it's the most exciting phase to be in.
Yeah, and I think now we're also learning that how technology changes and we say the world changes. Imagine the entire defense system also has to take that into account. Makes so
Yes.
many changes because the lives of the entire country depend on that.
Yeah, but don't forget, technologies have always been inducted in the military first before it went to the civilian arena, and after deciding what can be cleared for civilian use. And
Oh,
therefore, there are lots of technologies that are evolving within military circles, which has not even yet come out.
oh,
Yeah,
that's
so
lovely.
the applications of quantum today, for instance,
Correct.
the horizon is huge.
Yeah,
So many things happen, and therefore militaries have to keep abreast. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble.
yeah, yeah. So now in today's world, we hear a lot about AI, automation, and tech disruption. But you've already lived through those shifts in some of the most mission critical environments. So for leaders today who are navigating these rapid tech transitions in human led sectors, what's your honest advice? Like what really matters when the stakes are high and the systems, like we were discussing, are evolving faster than ever?
Yeah. Yes, this is a very important question, and my answer may not be very popular with a lot of people, but I've got to speak the truth, and let me say it. I have seen tech evolve from very close quarters across 4 decades, and therefore I have some observations for leaders and managers of tech environment. The critical part being, don't bring tech to areas where they are not required, is my first fervent plea. Areas where tech does not enhance efficiency or does not reduce errors or defects, or cannot help failures or standby options, tech may be avoided. I had a situation, for example, where my Bright Spark techies introduced touchpads, which you use on your mobile phone today, into communication panels of radar operators who are involved in the self-defense of ships. And they said, "Oh, great, technology has come. We don't have to put switches anymore. Let us use touch panel." But you see, in the mechanical switches, you could switch it by feel. Whereas in a touch panel, you have to remove your eyes from the radar screen and look at the panel to make sure you're touching the right spot, in which critical seconds get lost. This was a serious operational lacuna in inducting technology which wasn't required. And touch panels, if you're wearing gloves, which you have to wear under fighting conditions, sometimes the touch doesn't happen. All of which is costing seconds, very valuable seconds. This is one reason. Second, induction of tech does not reduce manpower requirement. It only changes the character and type of manpower in your organization. This is a very big fallacy and actually surprises the finance guys when they spend big money to induct tech, hoping that there will be a manpower reduction. But they find that manpower cannot be reduced to effect complementary savings, you see. And finally, notwithstanding the level of tech inducted, output and outcome remains directly proportional to basic human values of the personnel who are involved in manning, using, and maintaining the new tech inducted. Human resource management remains key, and leadership matters even in a tech steered, tech driven environment. Basic human values in the personnel engaged and in the value system of the organization remains relevant and critical to the output, notwithstanding tech changes. These can be ignored only at your peril. Human frailties, weaknesses, egos continue to remain relevant to the ethos of organizations, and therefore, outputs and outcomes cannot be independent of these human emotions and weaknesses. Say, I sailed around the world in a little boat before GPS and internet and everything came up. All right. My team had 6 officers, two from each service. This was in around the world in 88 or 89, I think. But the human reactions, which is governed by the experience that they went through. For example, the army guy was not happy to leave sight of the land. For the Navy guys, land means dangerous. The ship could run aground, the boat could run aground. For the Air Force guys, he was wondering what the hell is happening between these two. So the human emotions continue to play, especially in a multicultural organizations, and tech generally tends to be multicultural. Uh, the human reactions and responses to situations that I see in my current multicultural team of scientists, analysts, and personnel from diverse service, uh, you know, is clearly reflected. There are multiple cultures, they have to work together for the organization's outcome. Notwithstanding the level of tech, human emotions and human relationships does matter, even in tech organizations. Therefore, we just cannot ignore human element that runs like a strand across organizations, big or small, heavy or light on tech. That's my small suggestions to leaders of organizations who are dealing with tech.
Very rightly said, sir, that the beads can be technology, but like you said, the strand still has to be human.
Yes.
Know how to put where what. Otherwise, the beads can just, be
A
all over the
small
place.
knot in that strand and the bead will not pass through. You see?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Admiral, I have to ask because someone with your depth of experience never really retires from impact. What's next for you? Do you see yourself contributing in boardrooms or strategic advisory roles in the years ahead? And is there a personal mission you still feel deeply called to pursue?
Good question. I've been asking for it myself, and therefore I would like to call myself re-attired rather than retired because energy levels are still the same. I have attempted to lay before you actually so far in our conversation the lessons of my experience of 40 years in diverse areas that my naval career took me to. It was involved in exploitation of military technology, human resource development for the long term, diplomatic assignments in challenging environment of West Asia and Russia when Russia was transitioning from Soviet Union, conceiving and steering large infrastructure and capital projects, helming warship and weapon tech development, conceptualizing and delivering projects for collection, visualization, and dissemination of multi-sensor data, including space-based and terrestrial ISR, above and below water domain awareness, space situational, etc., which involve all of which involved cutting-edge technologies. I would really like to contribute to boardrooms, corporates, and policy frameworks who are involved in such areas and providing mentorship to tech firms dealing with data, sensors, weapons, who desire inputs from a user perspective and assist business development, growth, and policy framework in these sectors anywhere in the world. I have experience and proven expertise in mentoring and leading small and large teams, both linear and multicultural, towards a common objective. I mean, I would say my expertise also exists in generating the desired ethos because I feel very strongly about it, as well as enthusiasm. I like to lead and mentor teams to a desired common objective and would like to be involved for as long as I can think and walk.
Lovely, sir, and I think it will be an absolute privilege for any company to have you on board with them. Admiral, how do you view the role of corporate governance today, especially as organizations grow more complex, global, and tech driven? How do principles from your naval leadership experience translate into good governance at the boardroom level?
It's quite amazing, but there is such similarity between military governance and corporate governance. And let me explain. I see both military governance and corporate governance to be very similar in intent. Both of them have similar intent, but have similar kinds of constraints and restraints. Now, delivering an outcome that is favorable to own side is a common end state desired by both. I serve the stakeholders, only stakes have altered a bit if I move from military governance to corporate governance. But finally, the outcome that serves the desire or purpose of the stakeholder is what corporate and military leaders need to be mindful of. While the extent of freedom in the methods employed in both cases might be slightly different, the boundary limits and conditions are actually defined by the value system of the stakeholders. This is where governance kicks in, ensuring that the conduct of operations meets the boundary and limiting conditions either laid down or indicated formally or informally by the stakeholders. Ethics, accountability, collateral damage, perception management, and hence risk management are all to be aligned to the stakeholder values and not just outcome orientation. And that is why I see striking similarities between governing the military and governing the corporate. The stakeholder for the military was Aam Aadmi, the nation. In case of governance, it will probably be the people who are shareholders. That's the essential difference, but it's striking resemblance between the.
Yeah, and we all know that the ethics and the systems built in the military are far greater and far more ingrained than any other place in the world. So I think, yeah, you be the best person to do that. Admiral, one last question for you is how has your experience been with Directors Institute so far, and what specific value did it add to your boardroom journey?
I've been thinking about this question for some time since I joined the course. I was engaged so far in leading or providing frontline leadership or executing units or formations. The transitioning from this role and function to provide governance and guidance roles as directed by the education and exposure provided by the Directors Institute has been illuminating and a very interesting experience. That's where I began to realize the commonality between military governance and corporate governance. It's happened only because of the exposure that I got from the Directors Institute. As I attended the many capsules which are I must confess, very carefully curated to enable folks like me to transition from leading to mentoring, leadership to governing, shifting focus from molded outcomes to unbending ethical framework, and win at all costs mindset to conduct within defined boundaries have all been interesting and experience worth the effort. The very well curated and systematic educational and experiential actually inputs have been very inspirational because you get some people who are from the industry, they come and discuss their experience. That is something which I have not been exposed to so far, and that's one of the high points of DI. But at the same time, there were rings of familiarity with my military past too. Overall, it has been foundational at some level, whilst reinforcing at another, and therefore it has been a wholesome and an enjoyable experience. And I'm enjoying the journey. I'm yet to see what the destination is. I haven't spent too much time thinking of the destination. The journey has been very, very good.
I think that's a lovely thing that you said right there at the end, and something that is probably the key, one of the key takeaways, that the journey is that important. If you don't think about the destination, enjoy the journey, I think half of life would be much easier. Thank you so much, Admiral, for your thoughts today. It was an absolute honor to have you with us. Your journey from commanding stealth warships to shaping future ready leadership is a powerful reminder that real impact comes from vision, service, and the courage to evolve. So, thank you so much once again to share your story, insights, and your forward looking mindset with our audience.
Thank you very much for the interaction, Tanay, and the DI. At this stage of my life, I look forward to assisting and creating impact at appropriate levels, whilst retaining an abiding commitment to the next generation of leaders and managers, technocrats, and thought leaders. Thank you for the opportunity. Jai Hind.
Yeah, sure. To our audience, before we wrap up, if today's conversation inspired you to lead with more clarity, discipline, and purpose, then this episode did its job. This is Tanayol signing off from FaceTime with Leaders, a podcast by Directors Institute. So until next time, stay curious, lead boldly, and as Sir very rightly said, have fun in your journey. Thank you so much.